Does loyalty still hold any value in this country? Samuel Carter, a 72-year-old farmer, was on the verge of losing everything to development companies, even after dedicating 50 years of his life to supporting the armed forces. He issued one final warning, and it caught someone's attention. 24 hours later, something happened that would completely change his life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Truth Revealed. Let's go back to the beginning of this story. Samuel was a 72-year-old farmer who had worked the same 1,000 acres for his entire life. Unlike today's massive corporate farms, Carter Farm was a family legacy that had served both the local community and the military for 3 consecutive generations. For the past 30 years, every week, Samuel maintained an active landing zone in his southern field, just as his father had done during the Vietnam War era. This area served as a vital training site for military helicopters coming from an air base located 2 states away. Everyone in the region knew the Carter property. When new pilots needed to practice nighttime landings, Samuel would stay up late preparing the field. His wife Helen would brew coffee and prepare sandwiches for the crews during the long training nights. "You can't expect our boys to train on an empty stomach," she used to say. Even during the peak of harvest, Samuel kept the field clean and organized, knowing that military readiness couldn't wait for the crops to grow. For 4 decades, Samuel had never caused trouble for local authorities, but everything started to fall apart when tech companies from Silicon Valley bought up the surrounding lands the previous year. The new owners had no concern for military training zones or national security. To them, it was all about prime real estate where they could build their newest tech campus, and Samuel's farm was right in the center of their plans. "We're offering well above market value," they told him, but no amount of money could ever replace 5 decades of dedication to his country. The farm wasn't just a piece of land. It was a strategic training ground that had helped countless pilots hone their skills. Many of those very pilots went on to serve in various conflicts, including Operation Desert Storm. Sitting at his kitchen table, Samuel stared at the final eviction notice. 50 years of the Carter family's legacy were hanging by a thread, all because developers couldn't see the true value of that land. Did they truly understand what they were about to destroy? Samuel's father had maintained those fields throughout the Cold War, and it was his grandfather who had begun the entire tradition back during World War II. And yet now, zoning laws and real estate companies were on the verge of doing what even war hadn't managed to do: erase a legacy. One by one, Samuel watched his neighbors give up. The old Hawthorne property, right next door, where helicopter crews once rested between exercises, had already been marked for development. The road where the Wallace family had sold their 200 acres, land that had for years served as an emergency landing zone, had also been sold. Each night, Samuel sat with Helen at the kitchen table, reviewing the offers from the developers. "I just don't get it," he would say. "We've been helping train pilots for half a century. How can they erase all of that like it means nothing?" Helen would take his hand, remembering fondly the young servicemen and women who had come through over the years during those long nighttime training sessions. They had made a difference, but both of them knew time was running out. That afternoon, with trembling hands, Samuel posted a sign: "Military Training Zone Closing, Carter Farm, serving the nation's forces since 1943. Something inside him shifted as he wrote those words. For the first time, it all felt painfully real. Below the main sign, he added a small note: "Thank you for 50 years of service to our country." Samuel didn't notify the military right away. He simply kept maintaining the landing zone as he always had. But people nearby began to notice that something was off. The proud posture he once carried had faded. He walked with a slight hunch, and his voice faltered as he radioed in the coordinates for arriving helicopters. A young reporter came by to take photographs. She wanted to know about the farm, its story, and what it had meant to military aviation training. Samuel told her how his grandfather had first offered the land during World War II. He shared how they had supported pilots through the Korean War, Vietnam, and beyond. He didn't expect much from the article, just another story about progress wiping out history. But there was something about that simple sign and the story behind it that moved people deeply. The photo began circulating through military channels. 5 decades of pilot training on that soil, and as the post gained momentum, the story began to resonate even louder. People began to recall memories lived on Carter Farm. The nighttime landing drills, the emergency exercises, the smell of Helen's fresh coffee, and the sandwiches she prepared during long, late-night training sessions. That night, Samuel was alone in the barn when the landline rang. His daughter had often urged him to get a cell phone, but he always replied that the old phone still worked just fine. "Mr. Carter," said a voice on the other end of the line, "please hold for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs." Samuel nearly dropped the receiver in shock. For a moment, he thought it had to be a prank. But just seconds later, another voice came through the line. "Mr. Carter, I saw the story about your farm. Can you tell me more about it?" For the next 20 minutes, Samuel spoke with the president. The conversation wasn't about politics. It was about duty. He spoke of guiding helicopters through the night, of watching young trainees grow into skilled aviators, and of what it means to teach the next generation the true meaning of serving their country. "I've maintained the same landing zone for nearly 50 years, he explained, "the same one my father marked out decades ago." The president then replied, "We can't afford to lose training grounds like yours. Give me 24 hours. Samuel could hardly keep the phone steady in his hands. They were trembling. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs himself had just promised to do something to protect his farm. After months of bracing for the worst, a flicker of hope had arrived. "Helen," he called out, his voice shaking, "you won't believe what just happened." She rushed in from the kitchen. "What is it, Samuel?" It was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, on the phone. He saw the article. He wants to help save the farm. Helen began to cry right then and there, standing in the middle of the kitchen. After so many sleepless nights, after watching Samuel work himself to exhaustion, maintaining those fields, someone had finally understood what that land truly meant. The next morning, just as Samuel finished his daily chores, the sound of helicopter rotors filled the air. An Apache rose over the tree line, followed by 3 Blackhawks. As they touched down in the training field, Samuel realized these weren't the usual teams. This was the Pentagon's own fleet. 2 generals stepped out, briefcases in hand. Samuel's heart pounded. It had to be about the call from the night before. "Mr. Carter," one of them said, showing his credentials, "we're here to ensure that your farm stays exactly where it belongs, in service to the United States Armed Forces." For the next hour, the generals sat at Samuel's kitchen table. Helen served them coffee as they completed the official paperwork. The generals explained that the farm would be officially designated as a protected military training facility, making it untouchable to real estate developers. The armed forces would begin leasing the landing zones, ensuring the Carter family a steady source of income while preserving the essential space for ongoing training. "Sign right here, sir," one of them said, pointing to the bottom of the contract. "This document guarantees that your property will continue to serve our military forces for generations to come." Samuel's hands trembled as he signed. After so many months believing everything was lost, it felt like an impossible dream. The general smiled as he tucked the papers into his briefcase. "The president asked us to deliver a message," he said, rising from his seat. "He wants you to remember that some things are worth more than money, and supporting our military is one of them." That very afternoon, the generals paid a visit to the headquarters of Urban Tech. The faces of the developers turned pale as the officers entered the building. The small talk about market value stopped abruptly. Instead, they were handed new paperwork, official orders designating the land as a protected military zone. "But what about our expansion plans?" one executive asked hesitantly. He was swiftly cut off by the general. "National security interest." Within minutes, the developers began redrafting their plans. Not just those concerning the Carter property, but for every surrounding farmland that played a role in supporting military exercises. In the following hours, other farmers began receiving similar calls. The old Hawthorne Place, where a detention center had once been planned. The Wallace family's emergency landing strip. One by one, the threatened properties were officially protected. True to their word, within 24 hours, everything had changed. Today, Carter Farm still stands strong. Samuel still tends the landing zones. And now by his side works his grandson Noah, slowly learning every step of the family's inherited tradition. The training schedule is busier than ever, and Helen continues to prepare fresh coffee and warm sandwiches for every crew that lands there. Samuel still spends nights awake, watching the sky, repeating the same phrase he said for 4 decades. "We can't expect our boys to learn only in the daylight." The old closure notice, signed in his own hand, still hangs in the barn. A reminder. Sometimes people ask Samuel about the day the president called, but he just smiles and changes the subject. Instead of showcasing the newly installed landing lights or letting them watch the helicopters in action, what truly happened at Carter Farm wasn't just about preserving one family's land. It was a living lesson that sometimes the things that matter most in life can't be measured in dollars or contracts. While developers saw only a prime location for construction, the military saw something Samuel had understood for decades. Certain traditions of service are worth protecting. That's what this story's about. Love, loyalty, and sacrifice. If this message touched your heart, show your support by clicking like and subscribing to the channel for more stories like this one. And don't forget to watch the video that's appearing on your screen right now. I promise you won't want to miss it. See you next time.